Ghostly tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Ghostly Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to tell you a story called Ying. Ganyu, courtesy name Biren, was a native of Luling. Orphaned at a young age, he was left to care for himself and his younger brother, Ganjua. At the time, Ganjua was only 5 years old, so Ganyu treated him as his own child, raising him with meticulous care and boundless affection. As Ganjua grew older, he turned into a handsome and talented young man, capable of writing impressive essays. Watching his brother thrive, Ganyu's love for him only deepened, and he resolved to find him an exceptional wife. However, his endless deliberation over suitable matches left Ganjua perpetually unmarried. To focus on their studies, the brothers lived in a temple on Quang Mountain. One night, just as Ganyu was about to fall asleep, he heard the sound of women laughing outside his window. Peering through a crack in the shutters, he saw 3 or 4 women sitting on the ground outdoors, with a young maid serving wine and dishes beside them. The women were stunningly beautiful, like flowers in full bloom. One of them spoke up, "Chin, why isn't Ying here?" A woman sitting lower down replied. She returned from Hanguk Pass last night but was ambushed and injured her right arm. She really wanted to come, but she couldn't make it tonight. She's feeling quite regretful about it. As they chatted, a woman with a deep voice suddenly interjected, "Last night, I had a terrifying nightmare. Even now, just thinking about it sends shivers down my spine." The woman seated lower down quickly waved her hand, cutting her off. All right, we're here to have fun tonight. Why bring up such ominous things?" The woman who had started to speak flushed slightly but refused to back down. "You're such a scaredy cat. What, do you think mentioning it will make us get dragged away by tigers and wolves? Fine, if you won't let me talk about it, then why don't you sing a song to liven up the mood?" The woman sitting lower down began to sing, her voice melodious and clear. "On idle steps, peach blossoms bloom. Yesterday I missed the spring outings room. Neighbors urge, companions say, hurry, put on your phoenix shoes today." When she finished, her song was met with applause and cheers from the others. As the women were laughing and chatting, a towering man suddenly burst into their midst. His piercing eyes, like those of a hawk, sent chills down their spines. He was rough-looking and hideously ugly. The women screamed in terror, "A monster, a monster," and scattered in all directions. Only the singing woman, unsteady on her feet, failed to escape in time. The monstrous man seized her in a single brutal motion. She struggled and begged for mercy, her voice ringing with desperation, but the creature roared in fury and bit off her thumb, chewing it as if it were a delicacy. The woman fainted instantly. Witnessing this horrific scene, Ganyu's fury ignited. Gripping his sword, he charged out and struck the creature's thigh with a powerful slash. The monster howled in pain and fled, limping pitifully into the night. Ganyu quickly carried the injured woman into the house. Her face was as pale as paper, and her right thumb was gruesomely bitten off. Wrapping her wound with cloth, Ganyu did his best to stop the bleeding. At last, she weakly opened her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for saving my life. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Ganyu looked at her with pity and, on an impulse, asked if she would be willing to marry his brother. The woman smiled faintly and replied softly, "I am now incomplete and unworthy. I fear I cannot fulfill such a role. But I would gladly help you find a suitable match for your brother." Ganyu then asked for her name. "My surname is Qin," she said. He laid a quilt over her and helped her settle and to recover, then grabbed another quilt and made his way to his brother's room to sleep. The next morning, when daylight broke, Ganyu returned to check on her, only to find the bed empty. She was gone without a trace. Filled with regret, Ganyu asked around and searched everywhere, but the woman was never seen or heard from again. One of the following days, Ganju went out to the countryside for a leisurely stroll and unexpectedly encountered a young girl of about 15 or 16. Her features were delicate, and her eyes sparkled with a gentle smile as she gazed at him. She approached him and softly asked, "Are you the second son of the Gan family?" Ganju nodded. The girl continued, "I was fortunate enough to have been betrothed to you by your father. Are you now planning to abandon this old promise and marry that Qin family lady instead?" Ganju froze, stunned by her words. "My father passed away many years ago," he said, puzzled. "I've never heard of such a thing. I'll need to go home and ask my elder brother about this." The girl smiled sweetly. "If you agree, I will personally visit your family to discuss this matter." Still flustered, Ganju insisted on informing his brother first. The girl chuckled as she turned to leave, calling back over her shoulder, "You're so silly, being this afraid of your brother. My surname is Liu, and I live in Wang Village on East Mountain. Speak with your brother and give me an answer within 3 days." When Ganju returned home, he recounted the encounter to Ganyu. After hearing the story, Ganyu chuckled, shaking his head. "How ridiculous. When father passed away, I was already over 20. If such a betrothal existed, how could I not know about it?" He then asked about the girl's appearance. Ganju's cheeks turned crimson, and he stammered, unable to describe her clearly. Ganyu's wife, who was sitting nearby, teased with a laugh, "Look at him blushing. That girl must be a real beauty." Ganyu laughed as well. What does a kid like him know about beauty? Even if she's pretty, there's no way she can compare to that Qin family lady I met the other night. Here's what we'll do. If the match with the Qin family girl doesn't work out, we can revisit this matter later. Hearing this, Ganju said no more and quietly retreated to his room. A few days later, Ganyu was riding down the road when he spotted a young woman walking slowly, tears streaming down her face. He pulled on the reins, pausing to take a closer look at her. She was stunningly beautiful, with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. Intrigued, Ganyu instructed his servant to approach and inquire about her situation. The woman replied, I was once betrothed to the second son of the Gan family, but my family fell into poverty, and we were forced to move away. Over time, we lost contact with the Gan family. Now that I've returned, I hear that the second son has become fickle, planning to marry the Qin family's daughter and breaking his promise to me. I'm on my way to the Gan household to ask the elder brother for guidance on what I should do. Upon hearing this, Gan Yu immediately dismounted, stepping forward to greet her. I am Gan Yu, the elder brother of the Gan family, he said. I've never heard of this matter before. My home isn't far from here. Please allow me to take you there so we can discuss this further. Without hesitation, he offered her a seat on his horse and escorted her back to his home. Along the way, the woman introduced herself. My name is Ying. I have no siblings and currently live with my cousin, Miss Qin. Gan Yu suddenly realized that this must be the same young woman his brother had previously encountered. Piecing everything together, he decided to forego arranging a match with the Qin family daughter, instead preparing for his brother to marry Ying. When Gan Yu expressed his intention to visit Ying's parents to formalize the arrangement, she gently stopped him. Pleased with Ying's modesty and considerate nature, Gan Yu felt reassured that his brother had found an excellent match. Still, he worried about what others might think, considering her unclear background, and feared she might be labeled frivolous. However, as time passed, Ying proved herself to be a woman of grace and virtue. Her manners were impeccable, combining the elegance of a lady with the charming liveliness of youth. She treated Gan Yu's wife with the utmost respect, akin to how one might revere a mother. Both Gan Yu and his wife grew increasingly fond of her. 1 year later, during the Mid-Autumn Festival, Gan Jua and Ying sat together at home, enjoying a festive banquet. Partway through the evening, his sister-in-law sent someone to invite Ying to join the celebration. Gan Jua, reluctant to part with his wife's company, expressed his wish for her to stay, and Ying, smiling sweetly, told the messenger to return first, promising she would come shortly. After the messenger left, the couple continued chatting and drinking, showing no sign of haste. As more time passed, Gan Jua grew concerned that his sister-in-law might have been waiting too long. He urged Ying to visit his brother's home, but she merely smiled and remained seated. In the end, she stayed by his side, never leaving for the celebration. Early the next morning, just as Ying had finished freshening up, Gan Yu's wife arrived with a concerned expression. Last night, we shared drinks together, but why did you seem unhappy? She asked. Ying smiled faintly but gave no explanation. Gan Jua, overhearing this conversation, found it odd. Upon further questioning, he was utterly shocked to learn that his sister-in-law had also spent the evening drinking and talking with another Ying. Gan Yu's wife was horrified. Could Ying be a demon? She exclaimed. How else could she appear in two completely different places at the same time? Gan Yu, now fearful, stood outside the door and addressed Ying through the curtain. Our Gan family has always lived upright lives and bears no grudges with anyone. If you truly are some kind of spirit or demon, I beg you to leave peacefully and spare my brother from harm. Ying lowered her head in silence for a moment. Finally, with a look of regret, she spoke softly. You are right, I am not human and never should have stayed here. But your late father arranged my marriage to Ganjua. It was the Qin family lady who persuaded me to fulfill the promise. Yet, I knew I could never bear children for your family and often thought about leaving. The only reason I stayed was because of the kindness you all have shown me. Now that you no longer trust me, there is no reason for me to remain. As she finished speaking, Ying's form began to shimmer and transform. In an instant, she turned into a parrot, spread her wings, and flew away. Gan Yu and his brother were left stunned. They finally pieced together the truth. Years ago, when their father was still alive, the family had kept a clever parrot as a pet. Their father often fed the bird, and young Ganjua, full of curiosity, would ask, "Father, why do you keep this parrot?" Their father, amused, would jokingly reply, "Why, it's your future bride, of course." The family had often teased Ganjua about this. Whenever the bird was hungry, they would call out, "Ganjua, hurry and feed your wife. She's going to starve if you don't." Despite their care, the parrot eventually broke free of its chains and flew away, disappearing without a trace. Now, it all made sense. The marriage contract Ying spoke of had stemmed from their father's playful remarks all those years ago. After Ying's departure, Ganjua could not forget her, even though he knew she wasn't human. His sister-in-law, too, often wept, deeply regretting Ying's absence. Gan Yu, though filled with remorse, knew there was nothing more he could do. 2 years later, Gan Yu arranged for his brother to marry a young woman surnamed Jiang. However, Ganjua remained melancholy, unable to forget Ying. One day, Gan Yu learned that his cousin had taken a post in Guangdong, so he decided to visit him. What was supposed to be a short trip stretched into several months, leaving Ganjua to manage the household in his brother's absence. Unfortunately, during this time, several nearby villages were attacked by bandits. Wherever the bandits went, they left destruction in their wake, reducing entire settlements to ruins. Terrified, Ganjua had no choice but to lead his family into the mountains to hide in a secluded valley. Before long, many other villagers seeking refuge began gathering in the valley, forming a community of strangers united by fear. One day, amidst the murmur of anxious voices, Ganjua heard something startling, a soft, familiar whisper. He froze, straining to listen. It was Ying's voice. His sister-in-law heard it too and urged him to investigate. Ganjua hurried toward the sound, his heart pounding, and there she was, Ying, standing before him. Overwhelmed with joy, he grabbed her wrist, refusing to let go. Ying smiled gently, trying to calm him. Turning to the woman accompanying her, she said, "Sister, you go ahead. I'll catch up after I've greeted my sister-in-law." Then, Ying walked over to Ganjua's sister-in-law, who was overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out to embrace Ying. Ying softly patted her shoulder and said in a soothing voice, "This valley is not a safe place to stay. It would be better to return home quickly." The others, still frightened, hesitated. What if the bandits are still around? Someone asked nervously. Ying shook her head with confidence. Don't worry. Your home is safe. Reassured by her calm certainty, the group followed Ying back to the village. Upon their return, Ying took a handful of soil and scattered it across the threshold of the main gate. With a gentle but firm tone, she instructed, "Remember, do not step outside lightly." She repeated her warning several times to ensure everyone understood. When Ying turned to leave, Ganjua's sister-in-law panicked. She grabbed Ying's wrist, refusing to let go, and even ordered two maids to hold on to Ying's feet. "Please stay," she pleaded. Faced with such desperation, Ying sighed and agreed to stay temporarily at the Gan household. Though she lived under the same roof, she rarely spent time in her bedroom. Ganjua invited her 3 or 4 times before she would finally agree to join him, each time leaving him yearning for more. Since Ying's return to the Gan household, she often spent time chatting with her sister-in-law, who confided that Ganjua was dissatisfied with his new wife, Jiang. Hearing this, Ying took it upon herself to help Jiang every morning with her grooming. She meticulously combed Jiang's hair, applied powder and rouge, and dressed her with care. By the 3rd day, Jiang's appearance had undergone a remarkable transformation, and she now looked much more beautiful. When Ganjua's sister-in-law noticed the change, she couldn't help but ask Ying. "I've never had children and have been thinking about suggesting that Ganyu take a concubine. I haven't mentioned it to him yet, but do you have anyone in mind? I hope she could be as stunning as Jiang now looks." Ying chuckled and replied, "Anyone can become more attractive, though it's easier for those who are already good-looking." She then began examining the household maids, eventually choosing one with dark skin, plain features, and a build that resembled a man's. Ying calmly instructed the maid to cleanse her face thoroughly and tie up her hair neatly. She then mixed a special medicinal powder with rouge and carefully applied it to the maid's face. After 3 days, the maid's skin began to lighten, changing from a deep brown to a warm yellow tone. Over the next 7 days, as the powder penetrated her skin, the maid's appearance grew delicate and graceful. By the end of the process, she had become remarkably beautiful. The Gan family was delighted by this transformation, and their laughter filled the house daily. So immersed were they in their newfound joy that they seemed to forget the chaos outside. The bandits still ravaged the countryside, leaving destruction in their wake. One night, the sound of turmoil erupted in the village. The neighing of horses and frantic shouts pierced the silence, sending fear through the Gan household. They huddled together, too afraid to move or make a sound. Not long after, word came that the bandits had left the village. Strangely, no one seemed to have noticed the Gan family's house at all. At dawn, the Gan family learned the grim news. Nearly every surrounding settlement had been ransacked, and the bandits had slaughtered or abducted most of the refugees hiding in the valley. Yet the Gan family remained untouched, their home unscathed. Filled with gratitude, the Gan family began to see Ying as a divine protector, a guardian spirit who had shielded the household from harm. A few days later, Ying approached her sister-in-law and said, I came back this time because I couldn't forget your kindness and wanted to stay to ease your worries. But now that the elder brother is about to return, if I remain here without a proper reason, I fear it will invite ridicule. I think it's best for me to leave for now. If fate allows, I will visit you again in the future. Her sister-in-law, concerned, asked, Will Ganyu be safe on his journey back? Ying replied, The elder brother will indeed encounter danger on the road, but nothing serious will happen. Qin family lady, whom he once rescued, will ensure his safety. Still unwilling to let Ying leave, her sister-in-law pleaded for her to stay longer. Ying agreed to stay one more night. However, before dawn the next day, she quietly departed without saying goodbye. As foretold, Ganyu hurried back from Guangdong upon hearing about the bandit raids in his hometown. Traveling day and night, he and his attendants encountered bandits along the way. In their panic, they could only hurriedly abandon their horses, clutching their silver and hiding in the thorn bush. Just as they hid, a bird landed on the thorn bush nearby, spreading its wings wide to shield them from view. Ganyu, astonished, noticed that the bird was missing a toe on one of its claws, sparking his curiosity. Moments later, the bandits closed in, scouring the thorn bush with determined ferocity. Ganyu and his servant held their breaths, barely daring to make a sound. The search dragged on for what felt like an eternity, but eventually, the bandits left empty-handed, muttering in frustration. As soon as they were gone, the bird took flight and disappeared into the sky. When Ganyu finally made it back home, he shared his harrowing journey with his wife. Hearing his story, she recounted her own experiences during his absence. It was then that Ganyu realized the bird that had protected him was none other than the beautiful woman he had previously rescued. From that time on, whenever Ganyu traveled and stayed away from home, Ying would visit the Gan household at night, always leaving before his return. Occasionally, Ganjua would encounter Ying in his sister-in-law's room and would take the opportunity to invite her to his own quarters. Though Ying would agree, she never actually went. One time, when Ganyu had left on another journey, Ganjua guessed Ying would appear and hid in wait for her. Sure enough, she arrived, and he suddenly stepped out, blocking her path and leading her to his room. Ying sighed softly and said, Our fates have already run their course. If we force things further, it will only bring divine punishment. But if we part amicably now, we may still have a chance to meet again in the future. What do you think? Ganjua refused to relent, and in the end, they stayed together that night. At dawn, Ying went to see her sister-in-law. Curious, her sister-in-law asked why Ying hadn't visited the previous night. Ying smiled and replied, I was kidnapped by a thief last night, and it's all sorted now. I hope I didn't make you worry. With that, she bid her sister-in-law farewell. Shortly after Ying left, a large cat appeared at the door of her sister-in-law's room, carrying a parrot in its mouth. Her sister-in-law gasped in horror, realizing the parrot was none other than Ying. At that moment, she was washing her hair and immediately stopped, shouting loudly for help. The household rushed to the doorway, yelling and striking at the cat until they managed to snatch the parrot from its jaws. The parrot's left wing was bloodied, and it appeared to be on the brink of death. Gently, her sister-in-law cradled the parrot on her lap, stroking it tenderly until it began to stir. Slowly, the parrot groomed its injured wing with its beak, regaining a bit of strength. After a while, it took flight, circling the room weakly. As it flew, it spoke in a mournful voice. "Sister-in-law, this is goodbye forever. It's all Ganjua's fault. He has severed my bond with your family, and I resent him for it." With those words, the parrot flapped its wings and flew higher and higher until it disappeared into the sky, never to return. Alright. That's all for today's ghostly tale, Ying. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please also encourage everyone to comment and share more. We'll see you in the next episode.